Hello everyone and welcome to an incredible game from round 2 of this year's TePe Sigeman chess tournament. We have a clash between women's world champion Wenjun and Peter Svidler. Now, for those of you who are perhaps new to chess and maybe not familiar with the players, Wenjun, as I've mentioned, is the women's world reigning champion, and she will face Tan Zhongyi, who won the women's FIDE candidates tournament next year. I don't think the date is set, but yeah, sometimes in 2025. But even though she is a world champion, her opponent for this game is a most vile one. It's Peter Svidler, 8-time Russian champion, and while we could say a lot about him, let's just say after some 19 classical games against Magnus Carlsen, their score is a tie. Two wins for Svidler, 2 wins for Magnus, and 15 draws. So he is incredibly strong. He can beat anyone, and throughout his very long career, he has beaten everyone. Nowadays, I believe he spends more time playing Hearthstone than he does working at chess, but still, I mean, when he plays, he plays incredible chess, and he's one of those players that is able to make chess look simple. It's like when you see this game, you're just not going to believe how simple chess a game is. So let's check it out. Wenjun with the white pieces opens with pawn to d4, and Peter replies with pawn to d6. It is a very weird way to counter d4. For one particular reason. It's something that I like to call a nothing opening. It's not nothing, it can transpose into everything. That's why I call it a nothing opening. But the problem is when you face this with white, you have to know all the openings. You literally have to know all the openings. You can even transpose into an e4 opening. You could go for the Pirtz defense now. So d6 leaves all of the options on the table. She goes for pawn to g3, prepares to fianchetto her light square bishop, and pawn to g6. We have bishop to g2, bishop to g7, and now knight to f3. And Peter goes for knight to d7. He has control over the e5 square, and he wants to play e5 on the next move. And okay, Wenjun castles and pawn to e5. We have d captures, pawn captures, and now knight to c3. We have knight g2 f6 preparing to castle, and now knight to d2. It looks like a weird move. Why are you wasting time developing a piece that has already been developed? The problem is you can't really continue developing your pieces harmoniously. For example, you want to, of course, get the bishop into the game, put the queen somewhere, let's say d2 or d3, bring the rooks into the game. The problem is if you play something like bishop to g5, all of a sudden this is met with h6, and now you have the very unpleasant choice of moving the bishop back to a silly square, or you capture on f6, which just allows Peter to further develop his pieces, and also you've given away the bishop pair for literally nothing. So here, knight to d2 is the move that's played. You gain control over the e4 square, and you prepare to bring the knight to c4, as there is no d-pawn, so you can't kick it away, and white already has control over b5, so you don't have to worry about b5. And here, Peter just castles. There are some games where queen to e7 was played, also rook to b8 is a known move, but Peter castles, and it is now as of move 8 that we have a completely new game. So knight to c4, as we've mentioned, an excellent square for the knight. Rook to e8. We have pawn to a4, and now Peter grabs more space in the center with pawn to e4. Also limits the mobility of the light square bishop, which in this particular setup is somewhat of a monster. Pawn to a5, of course, preparing pawn to a6 to open up the position, and queen to e7. And okay, you might consider advancing the pawn to a6 right away, but after you capture it, you still can't capture back. The bishop is still on c8, and while you do mess up black's pawn structure, you still are down a pawn. So after queen to e7, bishop to e3. It's somewhat of a theme in this setup where to put the dark square bishop. You don't really have time for something like bishop to d2. You move the knight to put the bishop on c3. Maybe you do. Wenjun decides that there's no time. She plays bishop to e3, and now knight to c5. So knight on c4, excellently placed. Also knight on c5, excellently placed. And if she wants to take it, she will have to give up one of her bishops. So queen to d4. She asks Peter, okay, what is the knight to do here? I'm attacking it. You could go back, for example, knight to e6, but then if you go knight to e6, I might have some tricks with knight to d5, and now if you trade, it's just, It's just a big nothing. We've traded everything and not a lot to play for here. So instead, Peter moves the knight back to a6. And while it is kind of a silly square for the knight, he will get some TePe in. For example, rook to d8 will attack the queen. Then maybe the bishop comes into the game. The other rook maybe comes to d8. All depends on how she plays this. And yeah, while you definitely want to take advantage of the silly knight on a6, it's not easy to do so. And one of the options is definitely bishop to g5 now, but she goes for queen back to d1. Also, rook a to d1, rook f to d1 are moves sort of stopping rook to d8, but the bishop will just develop and the other rook will come to d8, and Peter will win a tempo. But she goes back queen to d1, and this is where Peter completely takes over the game. Look at this. We have bishop to e6, putting pressure on the knight, and now she just brings back the knight to d2. A move that you should play here is rook to a4, but it's an engine move that looks like, again, not something you want to do because it just looks silly. She played knight to d2, and now Peter's position is, from a a strategical standpoint, almost already winning. So how do you play this? Feel free to pause the video and try to find a way to punish White's setup while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on punishing the weirdly positioned bishop on e3. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is knight to g4. And while you're asking probably, why is this so good? We're giving up a pawn on e4. Yes, but only temporarily. And the situation on the clock is, Peter has some 41 minutes on the clock, Wenjun already down to 16 minutes, okay, she goes after the pawn. There's not much to think about here. Knight captures on e4, Peter grabs the bishop, we have f captures, and now rook a to d8, winning that tempo that we've discussed, and now you have this setup. Look at his pawn structure. He has 6 pawns, but a very, very neat pawn structure, whereas she has 7 pawns, but a fairly erratic pawn structure, plus the pawns on the e-file are doubled, and will make for an easy target later on in the game. We have queen to c1, getting the queen off of the d-file, and now pawn to c6. As the bishop has come alive now, there's no e-pawn, it's time to further limit the bishop with a pawn to c6 move. Rook to a3, with some idea of maybe guarding the king side if the e-pawn is advanced forward, but also rook to d3 looks very nice in an attempt to undouble her pawns and fix her pawn structure. We have bishop to f5, and now pawn to h3. We have pawn to h5 by Peter and king to h1. And now again knight to c5. There is immense pressure now on the e4 square, and something has to give. So she could go back with knight to f2, but then you run into bishop h6 and your problems just continue piling up. So she decides to trade. Knight captures on c5, queen captures on c5, putting pressure on the e3 pawn, and now pawn to e4. Again, could be a very nice pawn, and also the rook will have an easier time defending the king side, but now bishop back to e6. Just keeping the tension, we have knight back to d1, and now queen to b5, putting pressure on the e2 pawn, and she just goes back. Knight to c3, attacks the queen, defends the e2 pawn. Peter centralizes on e5, and now queen to e3. To defend the g3 pawn, as the rook no longer defends it since the knight is on c3. And now bishop to f8. The g3 pawn is attacked, so now Peter will attack it once again with bishop to d6. And if he can eliminate this pawn, he can even trade down and then just go after the doubled e pawns. We have rook a to a1, and now bishop to d6, going after the g3 pawn. And the only way to defend the pawn is to offer a queen trade. So queen f4, and while Peter does trade queens, of course he doesn't trade by capturing the queen. This would be quite bad. You would fix Wenjun's pawn structure. Pawn to g5. This is how he forces the trade on favorable terms. Queen captures, bishop captures, and now rook to f3, adding a defender here, but now g4. We have h captures, and now rook to d3. It seems like she consolidated, but not really. Feel free to pause the video for the last time and try to find the winning idea for Peter while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on always looking for the simplest solution. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is bishop to c4. This is how you win the d file, and once you win the d file, the rest is history. The bishop pair is incredibly strong. The e pawns will become weak, and you will get your rook to d2, and that's pretty much the story of this game. So here, rook captures, and you could also not take it, but you could go back, for example, rook d to d1, but then the game just continues. Nothing really happening here with Peter having more control. So she does capture on d8. We have rook captures, and now bishop to f1. Now the knight can move. The e2 pawn will not hang, but now rook to d2 is allowed. So you have to give something. Rook to c1, defending the c2 pawn, and now just bishop captures on g3. You don't have to capture right away. You could also keep just improving, but capturing is also sufficient, as now it creates a passed g pawn. We have knight to b1, kicks the rook away, rook back to d8. We have pawn to e3, offering a trade of light square bishops, but not even allowing that. Bishop to e6. We have king to g2 and bishop to e5. Again, look at this position. The rook controlling the d file, the bishop pair definitely fully operational here, controlling the entire board. This is, well, not easy to handle. Pawn to c3 limits the power of the bishop here, but now king to g7. We have bishop to e2, bishop to c7. Goes after the a5 pawn, a6, no other way to defend it, and while, okay, you do mess up the pawn structure on the queen side, nothing to it. We have captures, and now rook to h8. And look at this bishop. The bishop controls h2, the pawn controls these squares in front of the king. If the rook to h2 lands, that's pretty much it. So she has to play rook to h1, but now Peter just shifts the attention to the b file, and the b2 pawn is now hanging. The only way to defend it is to advance it to b4, which is usually the strongest move, and it is objectively the strongest move in this position, but sometimes even the strongest move is insufficient. So pawn to b4, and now pawn to c5. Either allowing the rook into the game, because if you capture, then rook b2 check, the king cannot go forward, then you have to go back, and then it's a free knight. So here, after c5, pawn to b5. So that's why, even though capturing this and messing up the pawn structure was sort of great for white, now the bishop is trapped on a6. We have king to g6, king to f2, and now bishop back to e5. Just, controlling the entire board, paralyzing the look at this. The bishop is paralyzed, the knight is paralyzed, the rook is paralyzed. If the rook moves, then the rook again comes to h8, and you dominate the position. So king to e2, only other piece that you can move, and now bishop to c4 check. King to d1, bishop to d3. Attacks the knight, now you have to move it, knight to d2, and bishop captures on c3. We have rook to g1, and finally king to h5, and he was in this position on move 50 that Wenjun resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Yeah, Peter Svidler with the black pieces against the reigning women's world champion. That's how easy Peter makes it look. Although, believe me, if you've ever played chess, it is definitely not easy. But it's the sign of a truly great player when you are able to make chess look simple. So here you resign because there's no move that white can make. Let's say you give a check, okay, nothing, or king rook to g1. The problem is black can easily just trade down, captures, and now go rook to d8. You don't even have to capture right away. Let's say king to c3. You capture on e4, and after you make a move, because rook to d3 is coming, let's say king to c4. Now king h4, and that's it. You just push the pawn and win the game. You literally don't care about what white is doing. White can even try to free the bishop with something like this. Let's say captures king to b5, g3, let's say king captures, let's say king to h3, let's say you capture on c5 as well. Once that king to h2 lands, that's pretty much it. Rook to a1, you're going to play g2, and the pawn now becomes a queen. She will have to give up the rook for the pawn, and that's pretty much it. You can pin a little bit king h1, let's say rook h1 check, queen comes into the game, captures, and that's it. Now Peter would just be up a rook, and of course completely winning. So, of course, she was not interested in that. After king to h5, she resigned, and what an impressive victory for 8 times Russian champion Peter Svidler. And the situation in the standings is it's still very early in the tournament. Only 3 rounds have been played. I will tell you, as I'm sure you guys are interested. So, shared first with 2.5 points, Anton Korobo, Vincent Kamera, and Arjun Erigaisi. Peter Svidler with 2 points in 4th place, and then we have with 1 point Noderbek and Nils Grandelius. Noderbek not having the tournament of his life for the moment. Wenjun 0.5 point, and world junior champion Marc-Andrea Maurizi still with 0 points. And as Arjun also is doing very nicely, here are the world top 14 for the moment, as you can see, Arjun overtook Gukesh. He's now world number 5 with a live rating of 2766. And as tomorrow is a new month. If he doesn't lose today, could be officially world number 5 on the next FIDE rating list. But yeah, incredible stuff happening. Carlsen and Fabiano still the only two 2800 players. Hikaru very close, 2794 at becoming a 2800 player. Nepo on 2770. There you have it. Prague is down to world number 14 as he has lost some rating, but I'm pretty sure one tournament and he's back in the world top 10. And then you'll have 3 Indian youngsters in the world top 10, which is which will be very hard to deal with for whoever is running the chess world. On top for the moment is Ding Liren, but anything could happen. We'll see. We'll see what Gukesh has to say about that. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Always try to make chess look as simple as possible, like Peter did here, and that will make you a great player. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Rudiger Osterman, Bjorn Bartel, Michael Hildebrand, Steve Schwartz, and Casey Jones for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.